What is up, everybody? Happy Friday to you. I hope that you enjoyed the week. Wow, the world is still crazy. The world is still crazy. Everyone is just going just off the deep end about Biden's bumbling presentation. Um, you know, Here's the thing. I don't understand why people would have pushed him in the first place. Joe Biden was not the sharpest Democratic candidate in the shed. And I just believe he was used as a puppet. I think Joe Biden is a shell. He's a puppet to some other people's agenda. He doesn't have an agenda on his own. He is literally a halfway talking head to some other elitist agenda. And, we're all just sitting back having to be embarrassed by it all on the world stage. But off that, so much race conversations. I swear this nation has become one of the most race focused nation ever. And I think it's made everybody conscious of identity, group thing, these echo chambers of thought and social identity, right? And everybody's just letting out their inner races these days, I guess. I mean, it's like, we live in a very X mindset where people are just, they're just speaking their minds. No more am I going to suppress my inner races. I'm just going to let it out. And so that's what we see a lot on Twitter. But, even in the mainstream media, they have propped all of these racist individuals of all colors to just spew racist rhetoric unchecked. So here we are in America when everybody's talking about who's on a grift, who's on this. And so I catch the ultimate grifter, black grifter, modern black grifter, Candace Owens sometimes. And for some reason, she thinks that like black people are following her show. A lot of black people are following her show to see what she's going to say about us, right? Because we're tired of people like Candace, right? And the minute she started talking out of pocket about black people, that is when, she is going to get ethered. So she is treading very lightly and she's really focused on the Jew anti-Semitic stuff that she's been, and I don't know if everything she's doing is anti-Semitic, but it definitely does have some anti-Semitic undertones, and the audience that she tends to attract tend to be very biased and bigoted type of people, whether they're bigoted against blacks or bigoted vehemently against Jewish people generally, right? And like I said, you listen to all the arguments in the different echo chambers, and there's a lot of nepotism in the United States, and it does impact how people from any group can get ahead. And that is notable. There's a pattern there, and you can't be anti anything when you're using the scientific method to come up with your assessments and your conclusion. And just because you have a unfavorable opinion about a people or group does not mean that you wish harm to that group. And obviously, if you are a truly smart and intelligent person, you know this. But off that, I caught Candace Owens talking about how Eminem, who obviously we know, white Eminem, the white king of rap is what some people would call him. He dropped a new album, and I believe he had 2 songs in which he took direct shots at Candace Owens. And obviously Candace did not like that because he was saying some very vile things about her, and he was actually calling out sort of what black people have been saying about Candace for a very long time, and that's really that she is a black op, she's a sellout, right? And she panders to white people, and not even just white people, just the white segment of America that has very negative opinions about black people that they suppress, and they love hearing people like Candace and Brandon Tatum, highlight negative aspects of black culture, because obviously you have a lot of people who are running around with supremacy and ideas about other people and other groups in general. And so they want to blanket these generalizations to validate their own supremacy. So they need people like Brandon Tatum and Candace Owens to buck dance about Black people in negative ways. So that was pretty much the root of what I believe that Eminem was going after. And obviously, Candace didn't like it, right? She took shots. She alleged that he is an undercover gay man. And, so she was taking shots back. But, nothing really that Candace said stick, because now she's like, you're pandering to the Black community. You want them to buy your albums. But on some real talk, Black people weren't really the ones ever buying Eminem's albums. It was always that demographic that she talks about, that middle class, rural, white group of people, right? He was their right rapper, right? And I don't think that Eminem has ever alienated them, because, again, he's done collaborations with some of the biggest hitters in the hip hop space. And it's really like any other space where, there is dominant faces. He's always that elephant in a room when it comes to the hip hop game. And I've talked about Eminem before, when you want to talk about, diversity, equity, and inclusion and giving people their flowers and stuff. Some people would feel like Eminem has been slighted. Now, I am from Detroit. I was raised in the Metro Detroit area my whole life. And there are some Eminem songs that I like, but be honest with you, I don't really care for Eminem's music. I've never really cared for it like that. It just wasn't the type of hip hop that I was into. I know a lot of Black people who rock with Eminem like that, but when it comes down to M and some other artists, they not buying M. And so I think that Eminem has always been for that obnoxious white boy crowd anyways. And that's who he pretty much has always catered to. That is who has got him paid. And I don't think that anything that Eminem does has ever pandered to the Black community. The one thing I can say about Eminem is that he definitely sort of presents himself as a white guy who has been around predominantly Black people like most of his life. And, as a result, you people do culturally immerse and fuse into what makes them comfortable, right? So if you're the only white kid in the neighborhood and you got a Black friend group to take you in, you're really going to start taking on the cultural identity immersion of that Black friend group. And that's not you being culturally appropriating. That's no, I'm being true to myself and what I grew up around, right? But the one thing I can say about Eminem is he's never tried to culturally appropriate himself to a Black man. And the difference between Eminem and a artist like Drake is that Eminem grew up and was immersed in the Black culture, right? He wasn't raised over in Canada by a non-Black parent, right? And then came over and tried to take on the identity, right? Eminem was actually raised around, Black people for the most part of his life. And he's never really came off as, trying to act Black. Like, to me, he's always just been a white boy that definitely clearly manifests that he's been around Black people, right? And I've never really heard Eminem trying to really highlight real negative aspects of Black culture. To me, I think that his raps were always, highlighting the sadism of white people. I don't really attribute any of Eminem's lyrics to anything that Black people would really relate to like that. Like, they were really manifesting for these non-Black looking people. But anyways, Candace had to validate her Black cred by saying that, Black people are listening to my podcast, and I went viral with Don Lemon and stuff. And a lot of this stuff seems like setup. Like, to me, Don Lemon and Candace Owens, they're both like going their own way, if you will, after starting over from a previous employer. And I think that they need each other to some extent, right? They need that clout, because where you have Don's audience who's going to be more hyper into the LGBTQ crowd, they can kind of clap back at anything anti-LGBTQ thing that Candace would say to them. And then Candace's crowd, who's typically anti-LGBTQ, can clap back at anything or co-sign anything that Candace says to Don. So it was just, to me, a big farce. And I mean, more power to them. I like to see Black people collaborating. So maybe Candace Owens is trying to progress. I mean, she needs to, the way she going after the Jewish community. She definitely need to. I do want to tell Black people, don't buy into that blanketed anti-Jew hate that people like Candace tends to be just slowly but surely kind of creeping in very subliminal ways. To me, I look at her delivery, her focus, and here's the thing, there is a caveat too. She's always like, oh, I got Jewish friends, I got this, I got that, before she goes in and just kind of talks about how Jews have been manipulating societies and manipulating America. And so, I do think that people need to take care when they're talking about, any group of people. Just like I don't like people blanketing Black people universally because of projections that are seen by the poverty line. I don't think it's fair to do that to Jewish people either, because there are some pretty decent Jews out there who don't rock with a lot of these, social, political, ideological think tanks. And they're just people trying to make it in this world and survive. Some of them are of faith. And they're just like, Lord, just help me get through all of this crazy stuff while we press on to your great day. But so, I mean, it is important to be very meticulous when you are making arguments about any given group, right? And I think Candace needs to be cautious too, because, again, she is definitely leeching on to the ideals of people who don't care for Jews. And that documentary that she's sharing and breaking down, somebody actually shared that with me months ago. I actually watched that documentary months ago before she even broke this thing. And I got to look for it on X, but I actually looked at it, and it was very eye-opening to see, some of those, other sides of the war that was not shared with us in terms of, how they were basically carpet bombing the German history out of existence. Like, they didn't want them to have memories or fragments of anything relating to their greatness or their culture. And it was a very interesting documentary. And I think people, are free to make whatever assessments that they want. But, I think the Holocaust is a sensitive topic for a lot of people because of what happened, but also because of really how it completely played out. And I think years from now, when we're talking about Gaza, right, I think that there's going to be some virtuous picture painted about what we are seeing. Like, I never thought that I would see a live genocide in my life, but maybe they've been going on all the time. And in the age of social media, now we just can see everything that's happening in the world in real time a lot of times, or at least, close to, when they happen. And so, I don't care to see children maimed. I don't care to see, all these widows and these orphans maimed and, displaced. And God's people, they don't create those type of scenarios. God's people do not create those type of scenarios, right? And again, I like to remind people that Israel in the Bible is talking about a people that is in union with the God of Abraham, Yahuwah, and who accepts his son, the Messiah and the King, Jesus, how we say it in English, Yeshua or Yahusha, if you're Hebrew. But those are God's people. And we don't facilitate war. We don't encourage war. We don't support mockeries of the Bible, right? We don't do that, right? Spiritual Israel do not do that. And so, I tell people it's best to disconnect from herd mentality. It's best to be as neutral as you possibly can in some of these arguments because, yeah, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. The division, the hate, the wars that we see brewing, these are all part of prophecy, and real believers, we have to continue to remind ourselves of this. But, you know, my thing with Candace Owens, and I'm one of those people, I talk about any and everything. And I think that's the advantage of being able to be an intelligent person, is you can kind of talk about things very pragmatically. But I think that, Candace is kind of all over the place right now. It's like, I don't necessarily know if this Eminem story was something that needed to happen. It's not going to help him. It's not even going to help her. And she used. Let's listen to some of the stuff.
I'm unironically accusing me of doing what he's doing. He's like, she turned her back on her own race as he turns his back on his race and calls them crackers. I've never used slurs to describe Black Americans. I don't have an issue with my race, but you very.
See, this is the thing about Candace Owens. She is such a deceiver. She has been hanging around manipulators for way too long. It's like, for her to even fix her lips to say those things, right? Candace built her career narrating Black people negatively with a very broad stroke. I very rarely saw Candace more times, as she did with the negative stuff, the positive stuff about Black America. Didn't see it. She's going with all these old school stuff, blah, 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 old school, conservative, usual suspect bullshit, right? But there are a lot of modern Black Americans who have beat the odds, who are successful, and who could be highlighted, to show that, hey, this isn't true of all Black Americans. No, but Candace had to pander to what the Ben Shapiro's wanted her to pander about, the ones who actually, to me, they could say they don't hate Black people all day, but actions speak louder than words. Those types of people who abhor Black people, she was paid to pander to what they wanted her to say about Black people. And so for her to fix her lips and try to go after Eminem and say, you're going after your people, and you didn't have to say any type of slur against Black people. All you had to do is get your ass on Daily Wire. Get your ass on Daily Wire and just show them a bunch of clips of ignorant Black people and broad stroke all Black people like that. That's what your ass did, Candace. So sometimes people just need to let things go because they kind of set themselves up. And I can imagine there's going to be some other Black bloggers who are going to be analyzing her comeback to Eminem like, girl, sit your ass down and stick to talking about the Zionists and the Holocaust and why that wasn't everything that they told us about, because you doing too much and not enough. But anyways, you guys, you have a wonderful day. I will catch you on the next one. And again, I check in. I don't even look at the whole show. I catch a clip. I'm like, what the hell is she saying now? Right? And I just literally see if she's talking about Black people. If she ain't talking about Black people, I move on. So anyways, you guys, you have a wonderful day. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye.